Welcome to Books We've Never Read.
Except for those we have.
I'm Jason.
I'm Nicole.
And this is episode 10 of our book club. And it is the last part of Remembrance of Earth's Past. The last two parts of the last book.
Parts 5 and 6 of Death's End by Cixin Liu.
Yep. Is there anything else on there?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, so if you haven't watched any of our other videos, we suggest that you go back and do that.
Make sure this is a video you want to be watching because it's the end of this entire trilogy and everything's a spoiler at this point if you haven't read up to it.
Yes, yes. So at least I've read the book up to this point. If you haven't watched our other videos, that's okay.
And then those of you that have been with us for a small part of the journey or the whole journey, thank you so much because it's been a blast and we've really enjoyed seeing your input and your interpretations of everything that we've read. Your own spin on it is what makes literature so great. Yep. That's what makes reading fun.
Mm-hmm. And we released last week our next book. It is The 7.5 Deaths, or The 7 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle by Stuart Turton. We're also going to be putting out the syllabus for that book soon because we intend for our very next episode to be our first reading in that book. So we're going to move straight on into it.
Yeah. We're excited about it. We hope that y'all will stay with us, but we understand if it's not your thing or you don't want to try that kind of reading right now. But we hope that you use our book club as an excuse to read all kinds of stuff. Sometimes you just never know what you like to read because you've never tried something else before. So we are really enjoying this, and we want you to stay with us. So make sure that you comment in the comments below. All that jazz, like and subscribe, share with your reader friends.
Yeah. Share it with other people that you think may enjoy it.
Yeah.
Well, I'm really excited about this next book because it's something that young Jason would have read, but that current Jason would not have read. This is more my speed. Mm-hmm. But I've had so many people who have not read this book with us who are going to read The 7.5 Deaths. And so I'm really excited about that.
Very cool.
Well.
Let's dive right in.
Yeah.
The end.
Yeah. This last, I feel like we poo-pooed a little bit last week when we were saying that it was slow and everything, and that's true. But this week really delivered, and it was. I have been describing the reading this week to people as like a spiritual experience for me, because it really hit me. Like it really hit me again and again and again.
Wow. Okay, well, tell us.
And I really enjoyed it. I mean, what did you think in general of this reading for this week? And then we can talk about the series as a whole later.
I mean, I loved it. It was great. It was sad. It ended the only way that it should. And I didn't have this feeling of, Mr. Cixin Liu, I have 3 things I would have done differently about your book.
Yeah.
Nah, man.
Mm-hmm.
I think it wrapped up very nicely.
Yeah. Lots
of cool details. I did see this part as less sci-fi and more philosophical.
Yes.
So it's like you said, like kind of a spiritual journey. This was more about people and our attitudes, our legacy, and what that means. Our basic human nature that we want to survive in some capacity.
Yeah.
Whether it's in a tiny little fish paperweight or, as a flat dimensional picture or something.
One thing that really changed for me was actually something that wasn't in the book, but last week when we did our live premiere, one of our viewers told us that Death's End is actually a misnomer, that in the original Chinese, it's more akin to like the god of death always wins, or I can't remember exactly what the wording was, right? But Death's End implies a victory over death.
Yeah. And
that is 100% not the way that the title was intended in the original language. And that person saying that really changed the way I started looking at this book, because I didn't find that out until 2/3 of the way through,
and we were getting all of these motifs of the inconquerability of death. And so I thought it was really laying it on heavy, that at some point humanity will find Death's End.
Yeah.
You know, and it was even mentioned at some point, like,
Mhm.
this was Death's End, and it was something to do with hibernation.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it changes how you read it, and once you realize that death cannot be conquered, then you go into the last portion of that book.
Yeah, yeah. Well, but I mean, that's what a book club is for, right? Is for somebody
Yeah.
out there to have
By
contributed.
the way.
Somebody that I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't think contributed
maybe,
to
but
my
I don't
experience
think we know
of this
person.
book, and I think that's so cool, right?
Yeah.
Because this last section was really awesome. There are so many things that we talked about in our last episode that ended up here, right? I had talked a little bit about how I didn't think it was true that they had figured out all the parts of the story except for like the one thing or whatever, and then of course these paintings come back in, the paintings of Needle Eye, and I like, what a great way to reopen this story by introducing us to the character Singer, who is some sort of alien. And the way they describe it, because he's one of the things that's running around doing these like dark forest strikes, right? And in his like simple little vignette, we learn so much about the universe at large that humans just don't know.
We were so naive.
Yeah. Well, so we have this. We have been mentioned before. We mentioned it before that the photoid strikes are economical and convenient, or whatever it is. But not only that, but like the guy who does them, it's like the lowliest job they've got.
Yeah.
Right? Like they don't even think about destroying other civilizations as something that is a big deal. It's just like, yeah, Tom, like, just do it.
Yeah,
just, like,
either,
anybody
either
can do
you
this.
do it or like the next guy will do it.
Right.
It's just a matter of time.
Yeah.
It doesn't really matter. And like even the photon isn't the most economical to them. There's another option.
Yeah. Well, but so what other technologies must a civilization have for them to look at destroying a solar system with a photoid? Be like, come on, man! Like that's child's play. Anybody can do this, right? Like, how mind blowing.
Yeah.
And the way that Singer goes about it is, at some point he says, when he realized what was out there, he wasn't busy, and it would not distract him from his singing.
Yep.
Like, he wouldn't have done it if it was gonna like make him like miss a beat.
It required so little to cleanse the world. It didn't even delay singing.
Yeah. and it brings us back to the way that Tri-Solarans spoke to us, right? Like bugs. Mm-hmm. And what business is of yours if I destroy you? And here is something that sees them as the bugs, you know. But these guys did not destroy the Tri-Solaran system. Somebody else did that. There's all these people running around.
He was like, gosh, why didn't they go ahead and destroy this world when they did this one? Yeah. Surely they saw it.
I thought that was... so we just learned a whole lot there.
I liked how Singer was able to pull our back and forth communications, the Earth and Tri-Solaran communications, the do not respond, or whatever, you know, all that stuff. And, you know, it is a literary technique or whatever after quite a saga to sum up the story from an outsider's perspective and how insignificant the summary is in that outsider's perspective. Chinua Achebe did that in Things Fall Apart. You read this entire novel of the colonialization of this country, and how it is the entire world to this one man. But the last chapter of the book is from one of the colonial forces, and it's, there was this guy named Okonkwo, and he raised a lot of heck, and we had to go clean him up, you know, like, and that was it. He was just a chapter in this guy's story, but it was the whole world, you know. Sorry, anyways, back to it. To Singer, what was for us 400 years of terror and problem solving and working side by side with the Tri-Solarans just to become sudden enemies again, and the race to space, and what literally was the entirety of the end of our civilization was not even an interruption in his song. Yeah.
Well, you use the word terror, and one interesting thing he says is, you know, he has this gift where Singer can determine which coordinates are real and which ones aren't, because like Luo Ji sent out false coordinates before, and somebody destroyed a world. But Singer can tell what coordinates are true because of the terror. All true coordinates, but terror endows coordinates with sincerity, and I think like it was an interesting kind of comment, right? Because yeah, I think I said last week I don't find this series to be particularly horrifying. Like until we got here to the end, and I do think that some of this is horrifying. So like, and not this part in particular, but I liked the focus on terror as the appropriate emotion that human beings should have towards the entirety of everything, right? Because of this, yeah. Because like some people say, like, you know, it should be awe, but like maybe, but are awe and terror really different? And originally, I don't think those words were sufficiently different.
They were not.
Yeah, and so
like awful and awesome.
It's all still terror.
Yeah.
Singer also has this conversation with his boss about like picking the weapons and everything, and one of his concerns, the reason that Singer doesn't leave the solar system alone for somebody else to come clean up, because eventually all things will eventually be cleansed by others, is what he says. But he's concerned about it because our species does not possess the hiding gene, and so a species that doesn't know to hide will expand without fear. And so there's this kind of counter, like what is scary to him is that we aren't afraid. And like on a certain level, there are several times that he mentions the hiding gene, and that's not possible. It is not possible for something to be built into your DNA to be afraid of like a planetary strike, because there's not enough time between. Well, there's not enough time between like the removal of that gene that is not afraid and creating offspring. You know what I mean? Like
right.
And so
it's all destroyed.
Yeah, it's a metaphor more likely than it is something else. And you can certainly have a gene for trying to protect yourself or trying to hide. They kind of make mention about Trisolarans being that way. That like all that matters in their society is survival. That makes sense to me. But like on a cosmic scale, I just don't think it's possible. And it's just kind of indoctrinated into him so that he is fascinated by this concept. They also make mention that everybody everywhere is kind of using these 2D weapons.
The dual vector, yeah.
Yeah. And that ain't good.
But it makes... that's how we get to our ending.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, is that, well, time to shrink, but we can't because all our pieces are locked in dimensional doors.
Well, yeah. So we'll get to that point. So I mean, like Singer only gets his one little bit, right? But
I wonder what life is like where he's from.
Yeah, I don't know.
I wonder if he's ever even seen his home planet.
Yeah, that part wasn't really clear. I also have I also suspect that his race is the fish that escaped from the fourth dimension. I have that suspicion.
I think so.
I'm not certain, but I think that. And if so, is his race 2-dimensional and not 3?
But it's able to hop into
or interact with, right? Like something that is 2-dimensional could interact with the 3-dimensional, right? Like we have lots of evidence from this story of that happening. But I don't know.
I mean, it makes it sound that way. Oh, my whole book is already closed out. There's a part when Guan Yufen, am I saying his name?
Guan Yufen, yeah.
And Shang-Chi, gosh, I can't do anything today, are talking, and they bring that whole speech up of, well, we're in the drying puddles, and are all the fish here, not the ones that made the puddles. And
well, and there's a part too where somebody says that they can collapse themselves down to 2 dimensions if needed. And it might be the conversation between Singer and his supervisor, or it might just be Guan saying that there are civilizations out there that can when the time comes. I'm not really sure.
That sounds more familiar.
Yeah. Again, we have a whole section.
That was one of your predictions though, and it came out right.
Yeah, that would eventually be going down to the second dimension.
Yeah. Well done.
That was a couple episodes ago.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'm like keeping score over here. Every prediction you made was just spot on.
Yeah, I got some good guesses. Again, we're following Changxin, right? And they wake her up when
poor baby
when they have found not the
through
photoid,
life.
but the other thing.
Yeah.
And they wake her up, and they're like, "Hey, you've got to go. Bunker World is screwed." And again, it brings me back to this like futility, and I think there's a certain beauty in recognizing the futility. Because it allows you to not struggle against things and to enjoy life for what it is. But these people have been struggling to build these cities behind Saturn or whatever, Jupiter, and like, hey, somebody chose a different weapon this time. And the fact that did not
that didn't even cross their mind.
Anyone.
The photon into the sun was the worst possible thing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it was definitely the only thing they knew about. So
right.
So trying to defend against it makes a certain amount of sense. But of course, there can be other options. Like there must be.
Yeah.
And then what tickled me about that is, as soon as it happened, the government was like, "Hey, escapism is legal again."
Like, I mean, do what you think is best, but just know that you can't leave because you can't beat light speed.
Yeah, but also we didn't let y'all develop the technology, so like I know this doesn't mean anything, but like if you want to try, you can try.
You can try, but you ain't gonna make it. You had said, the beauty of the futility of fighting against it or whatever. Changxin did say in her like own narration, it's easy to face the end of the world there towards the end.
Yeah. Well, because
it's hard fighting against it.
Yeah. It's giving up is easy on some level. I don't know, but I find the ending of this world to be particularly beautiful. But how is this time all that different from hundreds of years before, thousands of years before, when we first found out the Trisolarians were coming, right? Like, I'm not saying to just like roll over and let people kill you, but like it was always going to end. And how many people have not been able to enjoy their life because we're fighting so hard to have it not. And like I'm thinking about Zhang Beihai right here. He fought so hard for there to be no end. Or to like delay that end a few seconds, and whenever they talk about like the other ships that are trying to escape the solar system, they're all like fleeing this expanding 2 dimensions, but they're never going to get anywhere, and they're just trying to get a couple more seconds out of life. And there's something like sad about that, about someone who is that terrified.
Out of all of this life post communication with Trisolaris. There was only, that one phase that was actually a good life. Yeah. And that was once deterrence era. That was deterrence era. Yeah. Right? When like technology was booming and everyone was just the guns were pointed at each other, but no one was pulling the trigger. Yeah. But that was the only time that people really could enjoy life. The rest of this was truly horrifying. Yeah.
Well, and it wasn't quite on the same level as Trisolaris, right? Where like they're trying to not get nuked by their sun every once in a while, but it was very similar, in the end, to where you're just scraping by trying to keep your civilization going, I suppose. So I thought that was,
what a bummer.
Yeah, man. But we have a lot, like there's a lot of history repeating itself here, right? And we have them going up to this weapon almost like the droplet, and they're like, it's cool.
And Ding Yi.
Yeah, exactly.
Manages, through memory.
Yeah. So that was
to let them know it's not cool. I like that tidbit. I like seeing Ding Yi again. I missed him.
So I did not find their like analysis of the weapon to be as impactful as like some of these other parts. It was of course an important part, and I thought it was interesting, but it was most interesting for that dream of Ding Yi, like you're saying, and his questions are one of those questions that really haunted me, and it was something also from the beginning of this book with Yang Dong talking to the guy that did the computer simulations, where he says, do you think that only sophons can create illusions? And then you're like, oh god. Oh, okay, right? Like, because
Right.
sure, if Trisolarans as this other basically infant culture
Mm-hmm.
can figure out sophons, what is everybody else doing? And why do we have any reason to think that the universe truly operates in the way that we think it does? And that's a little like solipsistic, you know, but it's also true.
Mm-hmm.
And it brings us back to Yang Dong's question, you know, what is the impact of life on the universe? And how has it changed just simply because of us? And I really enjoyed that bit. How do we know that the universe is as it appears? And then they all get sucked into the pain.
I like that when Shangshin woke up, I mean, it was just like immediate regret that she has slept through life.
Yeah.
And she has.
Yeah. But she keeps choosing that, right? She keeps choosing to go to, like, she tells people, wake me up when the terrible stuff happens.
Yeah.
You know, it's, I mean, so, I mean, if we're going to talk about Changxing, we got to talk about Luo Ji. He's back.
I was so
Main
glad.
man, thank you, right? I'm really happy about that. But let's talk about their conversations, right? Because Luo Ji ends up telling them that they've got this lightspeed ship, right? It's your ship. You got this lightspeed ship.
Again,
it.
You called it. You're like, there's going to be one ship.
Yeah. And, but he tells her, hey, by the way, the only way to make a black domain is to, like, basically just, like, blast your lightspeed ships around and to make this, you know, lightspeed black hole or whatever.
Her realization that she once again thwarted the ability for the planet to save itself.
Yeah. Well, and so it's again her fault, right? Like, it's her choices. We could have had the best of both worlds, and her choices made it so we had neither. And it's not malicious. You know, she's
the best laid plans of mice and men.
Yeah, and I think that's what I take from her. I'm not mad at her about it, but and she is certainly mad at herself.
Sure.
For it.
Well, because she sees that possibility that her decision
right
might have been what messed this up. But Cixin Liu brings this point up a lot, and it's a good question. What power is there actually in the individual? It's very oversimplifying for us to say, well, she was the sword holder and she immediately messed it up, or she had the power, you know, to let Wade do his thing and she messed it up. But there's 1,000 other possibilities, 1,000 other things that could have gotten in the way as well, even had she done all the right things, you know. And AA also is like, who do you think you are to think that you really had this much power over the universe?
Well, and I also think that the solar system was going to be destroyed someday anyway. And so would we be looking for someone to blame in that case?
Mm-hmm.
And
always.
And then if we're going to be blaming people, let's blame Ye Wenxie. Why aren't we doing that?
Right, yeah,
You literally started this process.
We have long forgotten about her role in all of this.
I just, you know, how far back are you really going to go to blame somebody? And like, she's
Adam and Eve, right?
Yeah.
I mean, isn't that what he's been doing this whole time, comparing everything to Adam and Eve?
Yep. And you know, she certainly takes some. She is certainly an actor in this story, and a powerful one. But I'm not convinced I'm willing to lay the blame for the destruction of the human race on her. I'm just
on which her?
I'm sorry, on Changxi. I'm just not. I'm not really willing to do that.
No, but it feels good to do it.
It does feel good.
But then again, it felt good to kind of hate Ye Wenxie.
All right, but like, let's say she hadn't done it, and let's say that now we just have these like lightspeed ships, and maybe that doesn't create your black hole. But it does tell everybody else, like, hey, they've got lightspeed ships. Let's go nuke that planet right now. There's no reason that it had to turn out perfect like this, where, hey, everybody could have had what they wanted. Like, what are the odds of that? They're not good. No. So I don't fault her for that, really at all. Luo Ji if you want to talk about him, because
Yeah,
you're still there,
yeah.
hanging out in his like pyramid or whatever on Pluto. Super cool.
I love any of Luo Ji's homes.
Yeah, they're all great.
That dude is just,
yeah.
he's something else.
I really enjoyed taking us back to like basically pyramids and carving on rocks, and that is the best way that we have to keep our information going, you know, throughout the ages. And it's a return to simplicity, right? After all this stuff that we have done to keep our legacy going, we just do that.
You got to carve it in stone.
Got to carve it in stone. I thought that was really neat.
He also shows us that time does not heal all wounds. You know, him not even realizing the Mona Lisa had been with him the whole time and crying when he saw it.
That was such a great scene.
That got me, yeah.
And I don't remember if we talked about it before, but I thought a lot about Mona Lisa's smile and the wall facer smile, and how like maybe that's really what she has. It's knowing but unknowing. And it's all, and I think it's the absolutely most appropriate painting for Luo Ji to fall in love with. They also had that conversation about Starry Night, which I thought was really cool.
Yeah.
About how the stars are 2D, but the city is not, and all that. And I've never thought of it that way. And they even put this little thing in there, like, what if Van Gogh saw the end of the world? And I don't buy that at all. But
in his madness, maybe.
Yeah, I just don't buy it. But I thought that was an interesting analysis.
And I appreciate that the author found a way to help us see the picture he was painting with his words. And,
yes.
You know, Starry Night, I assume he also used Starry Night in the, you know, that's a universally known piece of work. So it gives everyone a fair chance to understand what was happening in this 2D transition.
One of the other, like, I love like the nihilism and annihilation, right? I've said that several times. They have like Earth Civilization Museum or whatever carved onto Pluto, and like Earth was here, right? Like that's what it says. But by the time Pluto becomes 2D, you can't read the letters anymore, and so they spent all this time, right? So if you want to get a message to people, how do you do it? You carve it in stone. Well, what if it's 2D? Guess what?
Oh well, you tried.
Yeah, and I love that.
And also, you know, with Luo Ji, don't blast those out into space. Just take them with you, and hopefully they'll. And then once they got to the planet, for real, they couldn't find those paintings anywhere, and it just all of our attempts of cosmic immortality of some kind. It's all futile.
Yeah.
Futile.
Yeah.
Futile.
Well. I thought that the description of the painting of the solar system.
Yeah.
It was. I read it while I was at work. I'll be honest. My boss walked in on me while I was reading it, and I was like, "You're gonna have to wait like 20 minutes because I'm having a moment here."
Stop.
It was so beautiful, and Cixin Liu knocked it out of the park. But just talking about it stretching and the size of things and the detail on things and the snowflakes, the 2D snowflakes that you get from the oceans, and I think what added to its beauty was the calmness of Luo Ji, and how he was like, he's been through it, you know.
Dude is 200 years old.
Yeah, I mean, he's really been through it, and finally the doomsday has come. One of them again.
The real one.
No, not the real one, because that one comes later, right?
Oh.
But I mean, like the ultimate doomsday, right? At the end of the book.
But I mean, for him.
But he chose that.
Yeah.
But he chooses to be painted in.
Yeah.
And he chooses, you know, to go quietly. And I think I see it from his point of view, where he doesn't have the same anger that Chongqing has, where she feels like she failed. Because Luo Ji is the other fighter. He's the other sword holder. He's the wall breaker. But he fought the best fight, and the inevitable still happened.
He did his job.
Yeah.
And never got any praise for it.
No.
I mean, in terms of public opinion,
right.
He did his job. Chongqing did not do her job, and she still came out more loved by the people than Luo Ji ever did. And so, and he lost his family.
Yeah.
You know, he never got to have happiness. Yeah. He just got the worst end of it. And for him to be so calm and like have his sense of humor back, and that was nice.
Yeah, it's just, it reminds me, he is old by this point, and he is that old person who can go graciously, right? He has seen it all, and it is time, and he is not here kicking and screaming, trying to eke out the last couple minutes or whatever.
I did like that bit of bitterness in the eyes, and really, it's just Chongqing that interpreted it as bitterness, but like, child, look at what you've done.
Yeah.
I did like that. He didn't say it.
Yeah. He wanted her to understand that her inability to make hard decisions has a cost.
Yeah.
Because she's going to be one of 2 known people running around in the universe, and there's no way that this is the last one.
Right.
And to be fair, like, that comes up again, where she makes a bad choice and it costs her. So there's that. I can't wait till the Netflix series when they do the 2Difying of the solar system. It's gonna blow my mind. I just can't wait. It's gonna be awesome.
It'd be really cool if we were able to watch it with 3D glasses or whatever.
Ooh.
Because then that way there really is like so much dimension around you, and for them then to have something flat would really mean something if you were wearing the glasses.
Yeah, very interesting. I just kind of had like a weird thought that tied into all this. When they're escaping on their new Halo or whatever, right? Getting out of there, and they go to the star that Chongqing was given by Tianming. They make a note that even though it was 287 real years, it only took them 52 hours to get to their destination. Mm-hmm. And so what's interesting about that is it's not clear to us where Sophon's controllers were. They might have been on the First Fleet, but they also might have been on Trisolaris. Mm-hmm. It's just not clear. And if they were on Trisolaris, it's likely that they ended up on the Second Fleet. But that fleet getting from Trisolaris to Earth would have only been 100-something hours for them, like in their time. And like, think about how busy you would have to be with your, like, all the messages you'd be getting all the time about like what's going on Earth, and like, hey, this is actually a disaster, and by the way, the planet's getting destroyed now.
Yeah.
And like, what a whirlwind that must be, because that's not a lot of time.
Yeah.
That's like 2 weeks in your mind. And I just kind of wanted to point that out, that it is likely that the second Trisolarian fleet had a similar experience with time. Mm. So. They show up on their planet.
Okay, so they go to the planet.
Okay.
Why on Earth, when Guan Yifan was like, oh, I need to go check this thing out, would he leave AA behind? There was room on the ship.
Whenever he goes to check out the death lines or whatever. Well, so this is what I'm referring to again as Chongqing's mistake, right? She makes this choice. I'm not going to stay. I'm going to go with you. And he's like, don't go. And she's like, I'm going. And that costs her meeting Tianming.
Why leave AA?
Why take anybody? Just leave them all. Go do it by yourself, right?
He literally was like, this is not a safe place. There's lots of travelers coming by. But hey, you hang out here for a couple of weeks and we'll be right back. Limit your communication.
Well, they had to make it sad.
It made me angry.
Yeah, well,
I felt like that was a weird plot point.
Maybe. I think the idea was that somebody was waiting for Tianming. I don't know why anybody really expected he would show up on this random day 287 years later. But they were really hoping for it, right? Like, they were really hoping for it.
That was not made clear to me.
Well, Tianming showing up, like, when they happen to be there, reminded me a lot of this whole, like, hey, by the way, sometimes saviors just show up and help you out. There's, and they do make reference that the Trisolarians are living around somewhere nearby, so he could see them show up, I suppose, or whatever.
Man.
But without that explanation, it's a little rough, right? I thought the planet was cool, just like as a side note, with all like the walking plants and everything. Very neat.
That was very cool.
Yeah. We also get we also learn a lot from Guan. There's a lot of different extraterrestrials. They're on a trade route or something. And so they know about all these things. It's impolite to ask people what world they're from or where the world is. Yeah.
Makes sense though.
We also learn here that the two-dimensional expansion of the universe doesn't ever end.
Yeah.
And that was something that wasn't that. It was something that
It was
Singer
a question.
refers to, but we now learn that that is indeed the case. And so, no matter what, eventually the universe is going to collapse into two dimensions. We also have ships that are traveling at the speed of light to try to make it to the end of the universe. The ultimate ships. I thought that was kind of a cool idea. And then we learn about the returners who come up again later, where they want to recreate Eden. Again, we come back to this idea of what does the original universe look like, and I can't remember if this is the point or not, where they say, originally it had 10 dimensions.
Yeah.
And what would that have been like? And because of dimensional warfare, it has been steadily collapsing. And our universe that we see now is the product of war.
Right.
And it has nothing to do with nature.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah. So that's a really cool point, right? Like our universe is all about us. Mm-hmm. We are the center of it. Mm-hmm. And reading it this way, like, oh, we're really on the down and out. We're down.
We're at the
7
end.
dimensions.
Yeah. We're at the end of like a long war.
Brutal war.
That has nothing to do with us.
Yeah.
Yeah. He makes a comment that the laws of physics are the most terrifying weapon, and I think that was an interesting quote, because I think that's true once you end up at this level that they're discussing. And
also, I mean, I know that like Yang Dong did not know all of this.
Yeah.
But now that we see this, we can kind of understand how she was at such a crisis point, given how much she did know about physics and how horrible, how horrific it is that the rules didn't work anymore.
Right.
We read that and we're just like, I mean, okay, it's a story, but like now we get it.
But like the rules weren't even real to begin with. Like the Sophons are hiding things, but the rules aren't the original rules.
Yeah,
they've just changed in all these ways.
They're just how it works here.
Yeah.
And I also think it's interesting that, in my mind, as we're going through the 4-dimensional world, I was like, oh, they must be like more advanced. They've got an extra dimension that we don't have access to. And so I immediately thought that 2-dimensional would be, they're the bugs, right?
Mm-hmm. Maybe not. Yeah. Maybe the guy who's already there has nothing to lose.
They killed us, yeah.
At some point, I feel like it's a conversation with Guan Yifan about what if time had 2 dimensions. I think that's a conversation that Changxin has with him. But they said, what if time was 2-dimensional and you didn't just move backwards and forwards, but you could also move essentially sideways? And I thought that was a really cool conversation. Like, there's no reason for time to be an arrow, right? What if it was something else? And that was just kind of a neat thought. Cixin Liu is so great about that, about just being like, hey, by the way, play with this, right?
Little nuggets.
And I thought that was really cool. I enjoyed that. And then the death lines explode.
Man. Okay, well, it's going to take 12 days to get this sorted out. 18 million years later.
I think it was billion.
No.
Was it million?
Yes. I counted.
Okay.
2 commas.
I got you.
Man, I had to put my book down.
Yeah.
I just had to.
What was so, again, I find great beauty in this. And what was so beautiful about it was she and Tianming, it's like 2 ships passing. And they missed each other by literal minutes and by 18 million years.
Yeah.
Both things are true.
He's here and he has a really cool present for you.
Yeah. Man, that when I realized what was happening in that scene, when they were circling the star at the new light speed and their computers couldn't work and they couldn't figure and so they weren't going to be able to decelerate. I mean, that was, I'm not a fan of Tianming. Like, I don't really care for him. But it doesn't mean that I don't want them to be together after all this time and all this space. And they miss each other. And this, like, weird, tragic accident that Tianming probably sets off.
Yeah. Like, accidentally.
Because he accidentally sets off.
He went through the...
Yeah. But...
the jet stream or whatever.
I mean, man, that one really hit me. Because we don't know a lot about him. But, like, that was the thing he was looking forward to most.
That was all he had.
That's all he had. And then to be like, oh.
And you know, like once, as soon as they left AA on the planet, I was like, well, we're not seeing her again. Like something stupid's gonna happen. She's gonna die. But then like they started making it back, and I was like, okay,
Yeah.
we're here. It's fine. I was worried for nothing.
Cixin Liu really played with our emotions, right? Like you're there, and he's like, nah.
No, you're not there. You're 18 million years away.
Man, that was so great. I really enjoyed that twist.
So they do get down there, right? They find their cosmic doorway. They get it all sorted out. Little Sophon hanging out in there.
Yeah.
Okay. What were the 3 prongs of cosmic sociology according to Ye-Wen-Si? Do you remember?
They were like life is always expanding, or something about it's. I don't remember. Sorry, I'm not gonna waste time.
Okay, but one of them was about dark force theory, right? Chains of suspicion. Yeah. One was about mass, right?
Even though the mass of the universe stays the same, life is expanding. It was something like that, right?
Okay.
Like, or civilization is expanding.
Yeah.
And so the idea, and this kind of goes back to some of the things that Singer was saying, is that low entropy entities, right, which just means not highly chaotic. That low entropy entities should be expanding, so the universe should be having, eventually, in a weird way, like less entropy, because it is becoming civilized. It's becoming things, and not just like falling apart. I guess is kind of the way I interpreted that.
It reminded me of that with this concept of too many
like
dimensional doorways have been created, and so there's been too much mass taken from the universe, and so it doesn't have what it needs to contract back and then big bang it out again.
So I really enjoyed that whole like cosmic bit, because our current understanding, I think, is that people think that the universe is just going to keep expanding until heat death, and I think that's like the actual science right now, as best they can tell. But I really hate that idea. I just don't like it. And my favorite idea, I just don't like it.
I've never thought about how I feel about it.
I have very strong feelings
about it. It just is.
And I prefer this model, where the universe goes until like an equilibrium is hit, and then the gravity sucks it back in. And it's called an ekpyrotic universe. And it's this old Greek idea that we're all one thing, and we're all born of this one thing, and it explodes.
From whence you came.
And then you go back, and then what they believed was that the universe would explode again, and that everything would happen exactly the same way.
Oh.
And that it's the universe like breathing, and so nothing ever changes, but it is eternal return, to use like a Nietzschean kind of idea. And I'm a huge fan of that idea, because again, I find it kind of nihilistic, right? Like, no matter what you do, not only will you not escape it,
but you're doomed to repeat it.
You're going to repeat it forever. And I love that concept. I think it's really powerful. And so I kind of enjoy that weaseled its way in here.
Yeah.
And then they're like, oh, but now the gravity doesn't work because you guys all made your own universes or whatever, you know?
But I mean, that's very clever. I mean, you can't just keep taking and tucking away without there being some consequence.
Right.
And so I do like how Changxin was like, well, it's not going to be my fault if this thing doesn't pan out. Like, let's give up our portion, except for our tiny little fish in a paperweight.
Yeah.
And
and I even thought about it too. It was like, what if that is the mass? Because Guan Yifan has that idea, right?
Yeah, he's like, no, it's fine. He's like, it might not be fine.
It might have fine.
It also reminds me of Ding Yi's little paperweight he threw to the ring, the 4-dimensional ring.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, we like fish.
Yeah.
We like can I have your paperweight?
Yeah. The scene of them unloading their mini universe.
Tell me more.
Took forever.
You didn't like it?
I loved it.
Okay.
But I loved it because of the pacing that Cixin Liu put into there. Because he's like, and then they moved the dirt. And it took 3 days. And then they moved the panels on the floor. And then they took the house and they dumped it out the door.
You know, it's tedious work taking apart a universe.
I suppose. But it is in a microcosm, a representation of what has happened to the real universe, where it's just slowly getting poured out, right? It's slowly coming to its end. And I thought it was really powerful the way that he portrayed it, I suppose.
I really savored it.
Yeah.
I mean, because it was the last moments of
Mm-hmm.
life
Yeah.
for them.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, like they're going out into the
Yeah.
the cosmos and headed towards a planet, but like,
Well, you know what I also
There's
love
nothing
is
there.
that, so we have this scene of them unloading everything, and they're like, all right, we're going back now. Right? They tried to find a place where they could survive and do the best they could
found
for
a 3 out of 10 or
yeah
whatever.
for whatever time they had, but we don't know if their mission was successful. We have no idea if everybody else chose the same thing or
Yeah.
not. And it brings me back around to kind of like game theory, Dark Forest theory. Do you just like YOLO it and stay in your mono dimension and hope for the best? We know that this is a very small universe, according to Sofon. How big are some of the other bigger universes? Like, how big? And like, how do we know that the one we came from wasn't one? You know, like, how do we know?
Mm-hmm.
And they chose to sacrifice themselves. They chose, what I find beautiful about it is that they chose to have that final annihilation. They chose to give in to death, hoping to give the universe a new life. But they just stopped running.
Mm-hmm.
They'd been running for so long, and they just stopped running. And good for them.
Mm-hmm.
Good for them. I really got emotional there at the end. That was good. The last lines of the book, I feel like were directed straight to me, right? Like as the reader, there's nobody left, right?
Right.
So what's interesting about those last lines is, you know, so now that we know a past outside of time, right? We now know that Changxin is the one who is writing her memoirs. These last lines in the book aren't her, right? They can't be. There's no one left.
Mm-hmm.
There are these fish in this bowl, and no one is left.
And there's no one there to see them do this.
There's no one there to see them. And it says, the ultimate fate of intelligent beings has always been to become as grand as their thoughts. And I think that's directed to us, right? It's not to live forever.
Mm-hmm. It's
to become something while you have the opportunity to become. Because all things are, in some way, like unbecoming, right?
Mm-hmm.
The entropy of the universe, your entropy as a person, it's all going to catch up to you.
So, if our goal is to become as grand as our thoughts, I mean, that explains why we tried to leave the museum as a legacy, why we tried to leave scatters of art in different two-dimensional planes, just so somebody somewhere could see what we had to offer.
There's a conversation, I think with Sofon, where she like makes fun of them, of Changxin and Guan Yifan, for coming from a race of people that was so hung up about like this patch of dirt right here. Do you remember that?
Oh, talking about Gone with the Wind. Yeah.
I don't remember that part, but she's like, y'all, that's why y'all died, is because y'all got hung up about this patch of earth or whatever. And maybe what they're saying is like, you didn't dream big enough, you know? And, you know, this book has given me so much to think about like, do we really want to be sending out, you know, radio waves to the cosmos or whatever? Like, I think I'm against it.
It's already out there.
You're right. But I think, you know, I think we dream too small, and so many people dream too small. And maybe maybe it is a natural thing for you to become as great as your thoughts. And maybe that is why many of us are not great. Is because we don't take the time to think of the chances and of the possibilities.
Yeah, I don't think as a whole that we are grand.
Yeah.
I think we're very little.
Yeah. And I think it's good to be humble about what we really are. And we don't need to be, you know, so, man, there's a great line in here that says, you know, incompetence or something else, those aren't dangerous to survival, but arrogance is.
Yeah.
And that kind of just comes all back. And like the concept that we can run from death and it's not for us, but the universe is ours for the taking and all that.
And that is so arrogant, and that is accurate to the human population.
Yeah. I'm just like reliving it all now. I loved it.
Yeah.
It was a perfect ending. I mean, it really was. I love books where the heroes all die.
Yeah.
I don't like my heroes surviving because in some way, like, I think it's unrealistic, you know, or I feel like the story is unfinished, you know.
Yeah.
And oftentimes good guys just live long enough to become bad guys, right? Like, that's a common thing as well.
Luo Ji.
No, he's still a good guy.
But he wasn't for
a while. But I'm glad that we took it all the way to the end, you know, because it's a story about survival, and it's a story about this futile fight, kill or be killed, when you're just going to die anyway, you know. And it's humbling to remember that you can, that we're all out here just trying to eke out a couple more seconds on a grand scale, and that in the end, when everything is crushed, there won't be any memory of us.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm also watching the Dance of Dragons or whatever it's called right now, right? The Game of Thrones thing. I'm watching that on HBO, and one of the characters is like, you know, legacy is all you have. And like I was thinking about that while reading this bit, and because so many people think that way, right? Well, what about my legacy? What about it? You spend all this time worrying about your legacy, and that's gone in like 40 years.
Yeah. I mean, but that is all they cared about when they were sending Chongqing and Ada Pluto. They were like, you gotta protect our legacy.
Yep.
We want people to know. I mean, because we are everything to ourselves. Yeah. That's all we... Of course.
Sure, I'm not like arguing about it.
You know.
But I also think that we can be more than that, right? Yeah. Just because it is obvious that we should begin in that like mode.
Yeah.
It does not seem obvious to me that we have to end that way, you know.
But it's like you said, I mean, these are traits that cannot be bred out so quickly.
No,
you know?
No.
We even saw it in book 2 when the neighbors were talking about how they wanted to be buried
and
stuff.
Yes. Oh, interesting, yeah. Man.
Yeah. I mean, it was... What a great series.
Yeah.
And great's like such an understatement. You know, what a powerful and time exhaustive... Not in terms of how long it took to read, but in terms of the span of time that the books go.
I'll be real honest. I'm worried that we like started too high. Like I'm gonna think about this book for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna recommend it to absolutely everybody.
Yeah,
and,
for sure.
And it's I'm a sucker for things like this, right? Like that's all there is to it. And sci-fi is such a great way to get us to think about these. You know, of course, think about things on like a galactic scale or a universal scale, whatever. But you're right about this book being about philosophy. And sci-fi is such a great mode for getting me to think about not how big the universe is, but how small I am. And that's really what this book is about. It's not about all the other things out there. It's about me and how little I am. And I'm just never going to let that go. And now we're reading a murder mystery. Like, you know, like, I hope it's good. But
so, you know, literature, novels, whatever. I mean, it's all reflections of life in some capacity. And so it doesn't matter what you're reading. If you have people to talk to about it, you're going to come up with depth and meaning and ideas and vicarious experiences. I mean, that's what it's all about. So, I mean, yeah, we started big. We started with something that had lots of layers, you know, and like lots of potential and lots of real estate. Yeah. You know, 3 whole books to talk about it in.
But I'm glad we started this way.
I mean, this is great. It's just, what a good adventure.
I really enjoyed doing this.
Yeah. Yeah, it was awesome. Oh, I felt like I had something else to say, but like it doesn't matter. There's nothing else to...
It all ends anyway.
It all just ends
Even this video.
Yeah. Man.
Yeah. I hope that in the comments, you guys will tell us. I don't know what else to say. No, I hope that in the comments, not only can we have a discussion about what you thought about this book in particular, but like, what do you think about like the philosophy that he's been putting out there? What do you think about this series as a whole? I think all those things are really important.
Yeah. Yeah. And I know a lot of our viewers have had some things that they've been itching to say for a while and just didn't want to
put it all on the table. We're done now.
Yeah. And for viewers, you know, way in the future, you know, that are just picking at the book and reading it and they happen to stumble upon these videos, please still participate in the discussion. We'll always come back to it, and other viewers will be with you. And you know, we'll if anything new comes out, you know, like if we find other relevant things to go with this book, we can always do shorts to keep adding to the commentary and stuff.
And I definitely think we have agreed that whenever the Netflix comes out, we will do at least one episode kind of
we'll do something
talking about it
Yeah.
and what we thought and tie it back in. We'd love for you guys to join back for that one.
Yeah, maybe we'll have popcorn instead of tea.
Unlikely.
I'm choking the whole time.
Well,
do you have anything else?
just so much. I don't feel like words adequately describe where I'm at right now.
Oh, you know who I can't stop thinking about? The little guy. Oh yeah, you want to guess?
No.
Oh, the little guy that fell into the black hole and is always falling into the black hole.
Oh yeah, I forgot all about him.
Haunting my dreams.
Well, you know, I said maybe that's a sign for something, right? Called it. Because it happens to Chongqing and Guan Yifan whenever they get the whole black domain and their light speed situation, right? And I said, what if that's foreshadowing? When they're both like dead and alive, but gone for 18 million years.
Man, time is a fickle friend.
Yeah. All right, well, let's end this.
Okay.
We've been going for an hour now, so.
Golly. All right, well, yay.
Thank you very much for watching. Thank you very much for reading with us. We really appreciate it.
Check out the syllabus episode that'll be posted about the 7 or 7.5 deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle.
Yep. My brother asked me, "Is that extra death matter?" And I said, "I don't know." I thought he was joking. I didn't know that there was two kinds. So.
There is actually something for us to talk about with that. So.
All right. Well, we will see you on the next book.